There's just something about dinosaurs, isn't there? What is it about these ancient creatures that's captivated people for so many decades? Well, I can't speak for everybody, but for me personally, it all started with a movie I saw when I was young, and I haven't been able to get it out of my head since. What do you say we start it up? Welcome back to Retro Rampage. Today's topic is a movie that left a huge impact on millions of people in the 90s, myself included. Jurassic Park. The movie Jurassic Park, I feel, needs no introduction. Directed by Steven Spielberg and released in 1993, kids and adults were captivated by its incredible blending of massive, lifelike animatronics and cutting-edge CGI that, for the most part, still holds up today. The story of a group of survivors stranded on an island with dinosaurs running loose grossed over $900 million and continues to be a massive part of pop culture to this day. Jurassic Park is a phenomenal movie on its own, and it's actually my personal favorite movie of all time. Where do you think my channel name came from? The film launched a franchise that continues to this day with new films, merchandise, and video games. But even in 1993, the same kind of thing was happening. Jurassic Park was so huge that a huge number of video games were made to cash in on its popularity. And this wasn't just a case where one developer made a game and then ported it to a bunch of different consoles. No, nearly every major console that was out at the time got its own unique Jurassic Park experience. And they're all over the place in terms of quality. I do want to mention that I'm not going to look at every single Jurassic Park game ever made. I'd be here for a week if I did that. Instead, I'm going to focus on games that were released after the first movie, but before the release of the second movie, The Lost World. And that still leaves me with a lot of games to look at. So let's look at these games and see if any of them are worth playing today. Let's start with the 8-bit systems and work our way up, starting with the NES version, and let's see if these developers spared no expense. I don't know about those of you watching, but I'm getting the distinct impression that this game was developed by Ocean Software. Really? The title screen too? The Ocean logo is almost as big as the Jurassic Park logo. Might as well call this game Jurassic Park Ocean. Aside from that, the game makes a good first impression with its graphics and sound. The T-Rex looks pretty good on the main menu, saliva dripping from its teeth, and the music is really funky, although I don't think it's exactly fitting for a Jurassic Park game. Once you get into the game proper, you'll see it's a top-down shooter. Apparently in this version of the Jurassic Park story, Alan Grant found a rocket launcher and decided to just run around the park blowing up dinosaurs. It's tricky to shoot with this thing though because Grant carries it over his shoulder, so you have to position yourself slightly to the side of your target, otherwise you just miss. Missing your shots is something you want to avoid at all costs in this game, as finding more ammo is extremely rare. The dinosaurs do drop ammo when you make them explode, but they only drop the exact amount of ammo it takes to kill them, so if you missed a shot or two, your ammo count will still be lower than before you started firing at the dinosaur. And if you run out of ammo, you might as well reset the game because you'll have more dinosaurs on your tail than you can count, and all you can do is run for your life. More powerful ammunition can be found with enough exploration, but you'll definitely want to save these for the larger dinosaurs, which can be incredibly aggressive. Avoid the tree line as much as you can, since dinosaurs will jump out with no warning and likely get a few hits in before you have time to line up a shot. The way you're supposed to play this game is by finding computer terminals which will open up new areas of the park. You can gain access to these terminals by entering buildings, but most of them require key cards. Each level in Jurassic Park for NES pretty much boils down to you collecting all the eggs in the given area, which will give you a key card. You use that key card to enter a building, collect the eggs in there, get a new key card, rinse and repeat until you reach the next section of the level. Some areas attempt to mix things up, like here where you have to row up river to get to the next area, and the boss fights are challenging. Here you have to keep Tim out of harm's way during a Triceratops stampede, but he follows behind you and his movement is delayed, so it can be a huge pain just to survive. At the end of the first stage, you have to protect Lex from the Tyrannosaurus, but getting her to follow you is a challenge in and of itself, and you only have a few seconds to shoot the T-Rex before you'll need to get out of the way. The following stages continue to follow this level structure, just with new layouts and bosses. Overall, Jurassic Park on NES is a fun game with good graphics and music, but it can get repetitive quickly, so I'd recommend this one in short bursts. The Game Boy version is pretty much a scaled-down port of the NES game. Of course, being on the Game Boy, the graphics are in black and white, and the screen is zoomed in to compensate for the lower resolution of the system. Unfortunately, this makes the issue I mentioned earlier of the dinosaurs jumping out from the trees even worse, so you'll want to keep your distance here. All my other criticisms of the NES version apply here as well, since this is almost the exact same game. The music sounds slightly different due to the Game Boy's sound chip, but it's not bad at all and I still like it here. One unique feature of the Game Boy version is this cool dinosaur encyclopedia accessible from the main menu. It lists all the dinosaurs from the game and gives a few facts for each one. It's a neat curiosity, but I have a hard time recommending this over the NES version. Unless you're a Game Boy diehard, you can skip this one and play the NES version instead. Now let's move over to Sega's 8-bit hardware, because of course the Game Gear would also receive a Jurassic Park game. Like a lot of Game Gear games, this game would also see release on the Master System overseas, and it features a higher resolution, so let's use that. The two games are pretty much identical otherwise. At the title screen, we hear what's supposed to be a T-Rex roaring, but it sounds more like some poor guy just stubbed his toe on the doorframe. As for the plot, this game takes place after the events of the movie. InGen is somehow still trying to get the park open despite everything that went down in the film, and many dinosaurs have broken free from their enclosures and are running wild on the island. As an InGen mercenary, it's your job to venture into 4 areas of the park and recapture the dinosaurs that have escaped. Well, you play as a mercenary in the Game Gear version, because for some reason the player character was changed on the Master System to resemble Alan Grant from the movie. I understand wanting the character to be recognizable from the source material, but this makes no sense when you consider Grant's character from the movie. He was just a paleontologist who got roped into visiting Isla Nublar because he needed to fund the dig operation. There is no way Grant would return to the island after what he went through under any circumstances, and no, we don't talk about that. Unfortunately, this begins a long trend of Jurassic Park games treating Dr. Grant like he's some battle-hardened mercenary, but we'll get further into that soon enough. Anyway, back to the game proper. You have a choice of 4 areas at the start, and each level consists of 2 sections. First, you'll have to drive to your destination, during which you drag a crosshair across the screen to defend your Jeep from various dinosaurs. These sections really require you to mash the button fast, especially during the boss fights. You can score some upgrades to your health bar during these parts, but you have to be fast because they scroll off the screen really quick. These driving sections are also way easier in the Game Gear version thanks to the lower screen resolution. Once you arrive at your destination, you'll continue on foot through some side-scrolling areas, which make up the bulk of the game. These end up being pretty fun, with a decent variety of environments to explore. You have 3 weapons to use in these areas: a horizontal energy shot, not really sure there, a diagonal rocket launcher, and explosive grenades. I find myself switching between the default shot and rocket launcher most often. The areas you explore will sometimes be altered as you proceed through, such as from lightning striking the ground or a tree burning away, revealing platforms. Speaking of platforms, you'll have to pull off some pretty tricky platforming as you traverse these levels. Grant can cling to ceilings to help cross large gaps, but that doesn't help the level design sometimes being confusing to navigate. The difficulty also jumps all over the place, especially with the bosses, which range from relatively easy to just plain cheap sometimes. The soundtrack has some good tunes though, so this is a decent Jurassic Park experience, especially for 8-bit hardware. I recommend the Master System version, but if you have a Game Gear, that version is decent as well. Not bad, Sega, not bad. Oh, but we're not done with Sega. Far from it, because the next game I've got here is the Sega Genesis version. And I've got some memories with this one. I grew up playing this over my aunt's house, and the dark graphics, creepy music, and that lightning strike at the title screen definitely freaked me out as a kid. Oh, and the T-Rex says Sega. Not sure why, just thought I'd mention it. Jurassic Park on Genesis was developed by Blue Sky Software. That's right, the Vector Man guys. Did they do a good job? Only one way to find out. Instead of being a sequel, this game loosely follows the events of the movie, taking place after the T-Rex breaks out of its paddock in this awesome cutscene. As Dr. Grant, your objective is to travel across the island and reach the Visitors Center to board a helicopter and escape. Survival is the name of the game here, as you'll have to scavenge around to find health and weapon ammo around the levels. Grant can arm himself with a taser, tranquilizer darts of varying potency, explosive and flash grenades, and even the rare rocket launcher. Switching between these weapons, however, can take a bit of time and can put you in a bad spot if you're not prepared. As you make your way across the island, you'll explore a lot of varied locations, many of which weren't seen in the movie. There's the power station, pump station, canyon, and even a brief venture through the inside of a volcano. One of the levels is directly inspired by a scene in the novel that was excluded from the film, where Dr. Grant, Lex, and Tim are chased by the T-Rex down a river. Although Lex and Tim aren't here, it doesn't make the level any less stressful. You have to stop and leave the raft every so often to collect more fuel canisters, but doing so puts you at risk of falling into the water, and Grant can't swim, so death is a certainty. On top of that, you have to be very careful to pick the right waterfalls to go down, or that's another life down the drain. This whole level requires a bunch of trial and error to complete, and it's the most frustrating level in the game if you ask me. Between each level, you're shown the path that Dr. Grant has traveled, and he takes a really roundabout way of getting to the Visitor Center. It seems he could have cut straight down to the Visitor Center after traveling downriver, but what do I know, I guess he just really wanted to see that volcano. The level design can be difficult to navigate. It's hard to figure out at times what is safe to jump on and what will send you falling to your death. The graphics tend to blend together, making level traversal a bigger headache than it needs to be. This is why I love the final level, the Visitor Center. The path ahead is easy to figure out, and platforms are hard to miss, but there are enough dinosaurs lurking around for it to still be a challenge. Just remember to press up and right to go through the doors. That took me a while as a kid. The final boss, if you can call it that, even requires a bit of out-of-the-box thinking to complete, requiring you to bomb the bases of the skeletons to trap the raptors instead of having you fight the raptors directly. The music for this level is also excellent, some of the best music to come out of the GEMS sound driver. The whole game's soundtrack is pretty decent, but this one is the standout. Jurassic Park on Genesis isn't a very long game. It's beatable in under 45 minutes if you know what you're doing, but it's a fun playthrough save for that river level which caused me so much frustration as a kid. It's worth noting that a big selling point for this game was the option of playing as a velociraptor. As the raptor, your goal is to board a boat and escape to the mainland, and you'll spend most of your time here chasing Dr. Grant across the island. The raptor is fast and can jump much higher, but she needs to constantly eat turkey legs and Compsognathus to maintain her health, which can add even more frustration to the game. I also swear that most of these levels were not play-tested with the raptor, as there are jumps that seem impossible to do since she's much bigger than Dr. Grant. The pump station was hard enough as Grant, but with the raptor, that level just got 10 times more difficult. The raptor is a cool addition, but not what I'd recommend for your first playthrough. Despite all its flaws, I still enjoy the occasional playthrough of this version of Jurassic Park. It's far from perfect, but you can tell that there was some real effort put in here, and if you're a fan of the movie, then you might honestly enjoy this. Good job, Blue Sky. But you know I can't just ignore the CD drives chilling under my Genesis, right? With the advent of CD technology, the opportunity to explore Isla Nublar in more detail than ever before was too great to ignore. Sega knew this too, and in 1994 we got a Sega CD version of Jurassic Park, but it's a little different than what you might be expecting. Start up your Q-Sound speakers and let's check it out. This one was developed internally by Sega's own multimedia studio, and it's an interesting departure from the other games we've looked at so far. Instead of being an action game, what we have here is a point-and-click adventure with an emphasis on immersing you into the environment of the island. The story takes place after the events of the movie. As an InGen scientist, you're being sent back to the island to collect at least one egg from each species of dinosaur when your helicopter is forced to crash land. After escaping the wreckage, you'll need to observe your surroundings and collect various items, all while finding eggs and key cards within a 12-hour time limit. That's in real time, by the way, and the timer is always counting down up here in the corner. This might make you think you have plenty of time to find the eggs, but every time you travel to a new area, the game will deduct some time off the clock to account for your travel time. You also get a travel montage with some pretty funky music. Imagine if you could fast travel in real life like that. Hey, I'm running to the store. You need anything?
Yeah, can you get some more milk?
Yeah, sure. I'll be back in a little bit. I hate going in here. If it's your first time playing this, you'll probably have no idea what to do or where to go, but collecting eggs is the name of the game. You have to find 7 different species of eggs and get them to the incubator in the visitor center before Biosyn arrives and sabotages the entire mission. Yeah, remember InGen's rival company, Biosyn?
Nobody cares.
It can be hard to find your way around if you haven't played this before, and some key items are easy to miss. You pretty much have to comb every area of the screen with your cursor and see if the icon changes. Other times, you might need to use a little bit of problem solving to figure out how to proceed, and it's easy to mess up and find yourself going right back to the beginning. Along your travels, you'll find these kiosks that can be activated, though some of them require a CD. These will pull up dinosaur facts along with a video of paleontologist Robert Backer explaining them in more detail.
Triceratops had very strong legs. It could accelerate in a charge right away and hit a top speed of 30 miles an hour.
The kiosks are completely optional, and they're a clever way of using the Sega CD's FMV support without detracting from the gameplay. Speaking of FMV, every so often you'll get video messages that further the story from your contact back at InGen, and these are a nice addition. I know FMV hasn't aged well at all, but it's cool to see more videos set within the Jurassic Park universe. From an audio side of things, the soundtrack does a good job of immersing you in the Jurassic Park universe, even if most of the tracks are just okay. And the sound effects sound much more clear than anything on a cartridge at the time. Even though point-and-click games are definitely not for me, I can respect this one for trying something different. It's not incredible or anything, but the Sega CD version is an interesting curiosity among all these other Jurassic Park games. Let's move back to Nintendo, because it's the Super Nintendo's time to shine. Just like the NES and Game Boy versions, Ocean Software took the helm for this one. At first glance, it looks to be a graphically enhanced version of the NES game, but there's a lot more to it than that. Instead of having a level-to-level structure just like the NES version, this game has a huge open world to explore. You're allowed to explore any area you want in any order, but this is both a positive and a negative. Having this huge open world presents a lot of opportunities to replay the game in different ways, but this also means it's extremely easy to get lost or have no idea where you're supposed to go. Instead of collecting eggs to get key cards, the two are now separate items that can be found while exploring. The eggs are hidden around the overworld, while key cards can be found inside buildings, and this is where the game differs even more heavily from its NES counterpart. When you enter a building, the game goes into a first-person mode, and now you're playing something that's a lot more akin to Wolfenstein 3D or Doom. Unfortunately, these sections run at a pretty low frame rate, but this was very impressive at the time, especially on Super Nintendo hardware. Thankfully, the game seems to be designed with the frame rate in mind, as the dinosaurs will give you ample time to line up a shot before they attack. Speaking of shots, these indoor sections provide a wealth of weapons and ammo, so running out is not nearly as much of a problem in this version, and there are more weapons to choose from too. You can have 2 equipped at a time. I like to stick with the bola cannon and rocket launcher myself. The worst part about these first-person sections is how easy it is to lose track of where you've been. Some of these areas are huge, and it can be easy to wander in circles without being sure of where you need to go. It really requires a map if it's your first time playing, and I use Nintendo Power. Judge me all you want, but it came in handy. Ooh, wait a minute, I want to visit a dinosaur dig site! Anyway, some of the buildings will have key cards hidden around, allowing you to access new areas of the park. There are also sections that require night vision goggles to enter, but thankfully the batteries for the goggles are always hidden in the same building, so it's not like you need to find the batteries elsewhere and then come back. The first-person sections are actually compatible with the Super Nintendo mouse. I don't have one here to test out, but it's pretty cool that the developers thought to include support for it. I wonder how many PC gamers got their start into mouse and keyboard controls with this game. The music inside the buildings mostly consists of low ambient tracks that help to make the game feel more tense, especially knowing that there could be a raptor hiding around any corner. But once you get outside, the soundtrack fires on all cylinders with a phenomenal musical score that plays to the strengths of the Super Nintendo sound chip. I'll say now, the soundtrack is without a doubt one of the strongest aspects of the game, but graphically everything looks pretty nice too. The island is divided up into areas with their own distinctive terrain, so even though it's still very much possible to get lost, there are landmarks to help you find your way. The biggest problem that many other reviewers have also brought up is that there's no way to save the game. That's right, the developers intended for you to beat the game in one sitting, and this is not a short game by any means. Even if you know where to go, it still takes at least a couple hours to get to the end. There isn't even a password option, nothing at all. I guess I'll have to leave my Super Nintendo on and come back to it later, not like there's any other way to continue. Despite its glaring lack of a save feature, Jurassic Park on Super Nintendo is an impressively ambitious game. The first-person sections can be confusing to traverse, and the game still has that problem where dinosaurs will rush you from the trees, but it's still a fun time and I'd say it's worth looking into. So, I hope you're not getting too sick of Jurassic Park just yet because we're still not done. For some reason, both Blue Sky Software and Ocean Software decided to take another crack at the Jurassic Park license, and this led to Jurassic Park Rampage Edition for the Genesis and Jurassic Park Part 2, The Chaos Continues for the Super Nintendo. Let's start with Rampage Edition and see if it's an improvement. Well, first off, the title is kind of misleading. Rampage Edition implies that this would be the same game as the original Genesis version, but maybe with some added features like new weapons or levels. However, the reality is that this is, for the most part, a completely different game that continues in the spirit of the previous Genesis version. Once again, you get the choice of playing as either Dr. Grant or the Velociraptor, and though the gameplay looks similar at a glance, Dr. Grant is not playing around this time. Instead of fighting for survival, this time he's shooting with lethal intent. Running out of ammo is a thing of the past, as you'll always have an unlimited supply of tranquilizer darts to fall back on, but you can find additional weapons with limited ammo like a shotgun and a machine gun. Similar to the Master System version, this game lets you select from a few different stages at the beginning, but regardless of which one you pick, you'll find out that the difficulty has been cranked up by a large degree. The stage that a lot of people gravitate toward first is the Aviary, which begins with Grant being carried to the top by a Pteranodon. As you make your way down, you'll find that the enemies want you dead, and this includes not only dinosaurs but Biosyn mercenaries as well. Even when flying to the top, you're guaranteed to take a few hits, and enemies can hide behind and shoot through each other, but you can't shoot through them, which means you're going to take a lot of unavoidable damage. Oh, and that Pteranodon will come back and try to pick you up again, and if you don't shoot it in time, you might as well restart the game. Graphically, it's easier to tell where pathways are, as the game is much more colorful than the dark, gloomy stages of the original Genesis version, but I don't know, I think I still prefer the dark levels. Maybe it's just because I played it so many times, but the original version felt like it had more ambience and I could take my time and explore. This is definitely more arcade-like, which I think is what they were going for. The levels can be equal parts fun and frustrating, as it feels like it's way too easy to die. The damage racks up fast, no matter what level you're in. In one section, you're riding a Gallimimus across the plain while being chased by a helicopter, and in another, you're infiltrating a Biosyn cargo ship, shooting more humans than dinosaurs. Remember what I said earlier about later games treating Grant like a mercenary? Yeah, this game's kind of guilty of that. Playing as the Raptor is a bit better this time around. It feels more like the levels were designed with the Raptor's abilities in mind, but it can still be difficult to attack without getting damaged yourself. One thing I'll say, they definitely upgraded the Raptor's jump height. Jeez, that's insane. We also get a look at the ancient ruins on the island, something that later pieces of Jurassic Park media would expand upon, so it's cool to see the idea explored here. Rampage Edition can be a fun game, but I find its flaws make the game more frustrating than fun, so I still prefer the original Genesis version over it. If you prefer faster-paced gameplay though, you might like this one better. Now back on the Super Nintendo, we have Part 2, The Chaos Continues. I guess Ocean was too impatient for the next movie to come out and figured they still had the license, so why not? The story takes place after the movie, as you'd expect, and it's explained in this impressively animated and voice-acted cutscene.
InGen must be eliminated. I will have control of Jurassic Park. As we speak, my men are on their way.
Even in 1994, this level of detail in a simple cutscene wasn't seen all that often. Basically, the CEO of Biosyn is still trying to take control of Jurassic Park, and sends a team of mercenaries to secure the island and capture the dinosaurs. In an effort to prevent this, John Hammond calls on the one man he knows can stave off the enemy forces, Alan Grant. Of all the games that feel like a betrayal of Grant's character, this is the worst offender. You mean to tell me that Dr. Grant willingly agreed to go back to the island at Hammond's request? I'm sorry, but I don't believe that. After what he endured in the movie, it's safe to assume that Grant would never go back to Isla Nublar, especially not as a fully equipped mercenary lighting up dinosaurs and enemy soldiers with a variety of weapons. The instruction manual explains that Hammond chose Grant because he is familiar with the island after exploring it in the first movie, but that still doesn't explain how he became so proficient in using so many weapons. The worst part is that this game has a two-player mode, and the second player controls a military sergeant named Michael Wolfskin. Why couldn't this guy be the main character? We just had to have Dr. Grant in there since having Jurassic Park on the cover wasn't recognizable enough. Anyway, the game allows you to choose from a variety of missions in any order, which I'm sure will allow for some good replay value. The levels will have you explore a variety of areas, like the dense jungle, derelict InGen compounds, a dangerous cliffside, and a fiery volcano. But now it's time I bring up the main mechanic of the game, weapon switching. Grant has a selection of 3 lethal and 3 non-lethal weapons to choose from, with each one increasing in power but having less ammo available. The reason for having this distinction between weapons is because of this number right here. The dinosaurs are still owned by InGen, so you're not allowed to kill them. The only dinosaurs you're allowed to shoot with lethals are the Raptors and the T-Rex. Everything else needs to be shot with non-lethal weapons, otherwise that number goes down. If it reaches 0, you guessed it, instant game over. This wouldn't be much of a problem, but the dinosaurs in this game are insanely fast, giving you little time to react when they appear. This means that in the split second you have to react to a dinosaur, you not only have to identify what type of dinosaur it is, but you then have to switch to the correct weapon to prevent that number going down. This is just not realistic to do considering how many dinosaurs the game throws at you. Now the number does slowly increase over time, but if you're shooting around with lethals without a care in the world, it will reach 0 and you'll be staring at the game over screen. Oh, but you're going to be staring at that game over screen anyway because Chaos Continues is hard. Sometimes unfairly hard, as you hardly have any time to react to incoming enemies, and health power-ups are few and far between. And when you get a game over, that's it, back to the menu. There are no checkpoints in the levels and no ways to continue if you die. It takes a truly dedicated player to see the end of even one of these stages. It's a shame too, because I think the game looks great overall. The environments are detailed and the soundtrack is fantastic, but that doesn't really help when the game is just so frustrating to play. I recommend this one to only the most dedicated of Jurassic Park enthusiasts. But hold on a minute, because there's also a Game Boy version of Chaos Continues, so let's give this a quick look and see if it's any better. Well, the title screen might say Jurassic Park 2, but the story is more or less a retelling of the first game. As Dr. Grant, you're just trying to escape the park and survive on your way to the Visitors Center, so this is Jurassic Park 2 in name only. Grant has a shotgun as his primary weapon, a shotgun with some pretty good range, but he can also throw grenades, although I don't use them that often. There's no weapon switching or dinosaur death counter here. All you have to do is get to the end of each stage while collecting these key cards to open the exit. This sounds like something that would be an annoying collectathon, but the cards are mostly hidden in obvious areas, so as long as you're thorough in your exploration, you'll likely get most if not all of them on your first time through. Unlike the Genesis version, Grant can enter the water here, and when he does, he gets equipped with a harpoon instead of his shotgun. The best way I can describe the gameplay is Mega Man with a heavier emphasis on exploration, so I think it's obvious that I'm a fan of this game. Some areas can feel challenging, but it doesn't feel cheap like the SNES version. The difficulty does ramp up every 3 or so levels, where you'll have to complete an auto-scrolling level where you outrun the T-Rex, and I have to say that is the scariest looking T-Rex sprite I have ever seen. It looks demonic. These sections can feel a bit cheap, as taking the wrong path will often lead to a dead end, but careful memorization of these areas will put you on the right path. And hey, this version actually has continues. I actually really like this game. It's a heck of a lot more simple than some of the other games I've looked at here, but I think that's one of its strengths. It's a short, no-frills Jurassic Park adventure that I feel anyone can jump into and have a good time with. This might be one of the only times where I think the Game Boy version is better than the console version. You guys still with me? We've looked at a lot of Jurassic Park games today, and they range in quality from not so great to pretty good, but there's one more I'd like to spotlight here in this video, and no, it's not the 3DO version. I think everybody knows from James Rolfe's Spielberg Games episode that the 3DO version is just terrible, and I don't even have a 3DO in my collection anyway. No, the version I want to show last is the arcade version. There are a lot of Jurassic Park arcade games out there, but the one I'm focusing on here is the very first one, released by Sega in 1994. It might not look like it at first glance, but make no mistake, this is a shooting game. Instead of a set of light guns, each player uses a joystick to move their aiming reticle across the screen. The seat, modeled after the Ford Explorers seen in the movie, is designed to rock back and forth during gameplay, making it seem as much like a ride as it is a game. Sadly, these arcade cabinets are exceedingly rare. I've been to a lot of arcades over the years, and I have yet to see a single one in person. I did hear that they used to be common at Chuck E. Cheese locations, and I even went to a Chuck E. Cheese to look for one, but no luck unfortunately. Still had fun though. But I still want to show you this game, so you know what that means. Time to load up MAME and take a look. The story makes no sense. I mean, to start, it's all text, so that's great. But a few months later, after the movie I assume, we return to the island. Okay, so who are we? Why are we returning? Again? Returning again would suggest this is the third time we've been to the island, so why do we keep coming back here? So many questions from such a small amount of text. Once the game starts, you'll see it's a rail shooter. You're in some sort of vehicle stuck on a predetermined path, so all you do is shoot the dinosaurs. Once the T-Rex makes her appearance, the graphical style of this game really becomes noticeable. Everything in this game is made up of sprites, even the T-Rex, which itself is made up of multiple layers of sprites, and this looks awesome. Everything has such a sharp and refined look to it, and it looks phenomenal in motion. Some aspects have aged better than others, like these velociraptors, which look pretty flat when compared to everything else. You won't have a lot of time to admire the graphics though, since this game will throw hundreds of dinosaurs at you every waking moment that there's still health in your health bar. This is a true quarter muncher at heart. This game wants to get as much money out of you as possible before you reach the end, and it can feel downright cheap most of the time. Many of these moments require perfect reaction time, and even with 2 players, it's impossible to avoid taking damage. These dinosaurs want you dead, so prepare to continue a lot. As you drive through different areas of the park, the game gets more and more ridiculous. You'll jump off a brachiosaur's neck, fall hundreds of feet before landing safely, and drive across a perilous wooden bridge inside a volcano only to be attacked by the volcano as it's erupting. Ha! Take that, Fallen Kingdom. This game did the whole erupting volcano thing first. Honestly, the pure insanity of this game is part of the reason I like it so much. I mean, yeah, none of this makes any sense, but there's literally a part where a brachiosaurus sneezes on you, and it teleports you to a different area. I have no explanation for that, it just happens, so you're clearly not meant to take any of this seriously. The final area of the game throws a curveball by revealing there are actually 2 T-Rexes on the island, and I have no idea where the second T-Rex came from, but after everything else that happens in the game, I'm willing to roll with it. And after all that 20 minutes of straight sensory overload, we get a few stills of the dinosaurs being returned to their enclosures, and a helicopter flies away. A lackluster ending to what is otherwise a fun but stressful game. It's a shame this has never been re-released in any form. I mean, yeah, there's not a lot to it, and you can beat the whole thing in under 20 minutes, but sometimes it's just fun to turn your brain off and shoot dinosaurs for a while. And with how easy it is to emulate, wasting quarters isn't a problem anymore. If you've got some time to kill, this is a fun way to spend it. Now, if only I could find a real cabinet out there somewhere. And there you have it, folks. Those are all the Jurassic Park games I could find that were released after the first movie, but before The Lost World. I think it's obvious now, but even before the second movie had released, Jurassic Park had already become a hugely recognizable brand, and these games definitely contributed to that. We looked at some good ones today and some not so good ones, but overall, I'd say Jurassic Park fared pretty well in terms of video game quality. There were tons of movie-based games in the 90s that just turned out terrible, so the fact that most of these are pretty decent says a lot about the brand's quality. With so many different gameplay styles, I'm certain everyone is going to prefer different games, so I'm curious to hear from those of you watching which of these is your favorite. The Jurassic Park franchise would of course continue with the release of The Lost World in 1997, and that would receive its own line of tie-in video games. Maybe I'll look at some of those later down the line, but I think this is a good stopping point for now. Besides, I gotta finish watching the movie now. Thank you all for joining me for this prehistoric episode of Retro Rampage, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Bingo. Dino DNA.
See? It remembers where I left off. I'm telling you, VHS is the way of the future.